Mankind has two sides, the one that he shows to the world, and the one that he chooses to hide. So yeah, the former is way better, so let's just focus on that.
Damn.
The Incredible Hulk Ultimate Destruction is the 2005 follow-up to Radical Entertainment's first run-in with the Gamma-powered powerhouse, the simply titled Hulk. This was that odd cel-shaded half-stealth puzzle game and half-Hulk game. Now, I think I speak for us all when I say that Ultimate Destruction is one of the more beloved superhero games of all time, as it came out just when game consoles were getting advanced enough to really do the characters justice. Before then, the Green Goliath only had a few half-hearted attempts that tried to capture his savage fury, but either due to technological limits, small scope and ambition, or just none of them really made a big impression. That's why Ultimate Destruction was so celebrated, but how does it hold up today? Is it still the definitive Hulk experience? Did the character's video game career really peak with it? Well, all those questions and more will be answered here on Hero or Zero. Now, there's a bit of a unique situation surrounding Ultimate Destruction's origins, as Ang Lee's 2003 Hulk film didn't really resonate too much with general audiences or critics, at least when compared to Spider-Man or the X-Men. The game adaptation was left to Radical, and while certainly not a poor effort, it was similarly polarizing and was more of a semi-sequel to the movie, and yes, it included the Hulk dogs.
Ugly motherfucker.
When a sequel to Ang Lee's movie failed to materialize, Radical and the rights holders for Hulk video games, Vivendi Universal, were left without much to do. So it was decided to put a wholly original Hulk adventure into production, which would let the team cut loose from trying to release alongside a movie premiere and explore some other material. Now, to help me expand on some aspects of its development, I was able to pick the brain of one Eric Holmes, a lead game designer on Hulk and his Ultimate Destruction, who recalls how the project got started. We initially were assuming there'd be a follow-up movie, and we would be continuing that story to some degree. After the movie came out and it wasn't a hit on the Raimi Spider-Man levels, it became clear we'd take another path. A few of us were fans of the Ultimate series of comics, so that's where we wanted to pull some inspiration. And that led to Brian Hitch himself becoming our character concept artist. Secondly, open world games were exploding in the wake of GTA 3 changing the entire industry. We knew we wanted to do something more open, more free than the heavy room corridor room restrictions we had in the first game. So exploring that and how the hell we would build such a thing became the starting point. Add this together, open world, more freedom, powerful character, where do we take that? So obviously the game features Bruce Banner, General Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross, Emil Blonsky, and Doc Samson, all with a fresh and unique voice cast. It's neat that the story Radical opted for here is really similar to what would be seen in the Edward Norton adaptation some 3 years later. Blonsky is positioned as the central villain, who starts off human, but later transforms into some type of, I don't even know how to describe it, an abomination? That's a great name. Bruce, meanwhile, hates being the Hulk, as his finances have been slowly drained over the years from always having to replace his pants.
Want a break from the ass?
So he and bosom buddy Doc Samson attempt to try and rid Banner's mind of Big Green through the magic, mystical properties of modern science. To do this, Hulk will need to terrorize a major metropolitan city, as well as the rolling open plains of a nearby desert, and steal millions of dollars of scientific equipment to build a giant thing that'll boot Hulk from Brucey's brain. The stealing of this technology makes Blonsky and Ross understandably upset, so hilarity ensues.
Ultimate Destruction is filmed in front of a live studio audience.
Bruce's hideout, an abandoned church called the Noblonskis Club, serves as the game's base of operations. It's here where Hulkington can jump to the open world maps and get missions underway. It's a little odd when you compare it to other similar games of the time, but due to technical reasons, Radical had to break it up in this way. They had originally designed the open world to be way too large, and the performance started to suffer, hence the chunks you see in the final game. Once you enter these sections, well, that's where you can start to go apeshit, as it's where the game's strengths truly lie, but unfortunately also where you'll find a few of its weaknesses. Look, I'm not gonna pull your big bulging bicep here. Ultimate Destruction's positives are immediately apparent the second you move the Jade Giant around the screen. He really feels like a roaring, roided up wrecking ball that can steamroll through almost everything and bounce in the air whenever he damn well pleases. What Radical really nailed, much like Treyarch with Spider-Man 2, is the general locomotion of the character and really making you feel like you can do almost anything. Aside from the basic running and jumping, there's a whole host of buttons at your disposal just itching to be pressed to trigger something cool. You have weak and strong hits, a quick dash, a grab, a couple of combos, and a chainable bounding jump you can pre-charge. Now while that doesn't seem like a ton, it's just the starting moveset, and it's enough to make you feel immensely powerful right off the bat. As you progress through the story, you start to see just how much work and attention Radical put into fleshing out the combat. You're spoiled with dozens and dozens of moves to purchase at regular intervals, with almost all of them becoming immensely useful additions to Hulk's repertoire, with the screen-shaking critical mass supers being the absolute highlight. A lot of these techniques can also be applied to the environment. Hulk can ride buses like mangled metallic skateboards, toss tanks around like toys, reflect missiles back at his enemies, and of course mash someone's Lexus into boxing gloves. I have to say, this is the main draw of Ultimate Destruction, unlocking and then wreaking havoc with all this amazingly fun stuff. It's just a joy to control the big green doofus. Now, dotted throughout the open world playgrounds are a variety of side activities, which, in other titles of the day, even of the web-slinging variety, are usually pretty inconsistent in their appeal. But fortunately, that's not the case with Ultimate Destruction. Radical stuffed the game with a bevy of goofy and not so goofy missions that are never particularly frustrating, unless you're maybe trying to get all golds. You're whacking enemies who endlessly jump out of helicopters, playing golf, and this is all mixed in with your standard stuff you'd see in open world superheroing, combat trials, course jumping, that kind of thing. Now, going a bit deeper on those two main environments, while they're not overly complex, they do have plenty to actually pilfer, which is always a big plus in Matt's cool book of superhero game stuff. There's comic book covers, character bios, concept art, cheats, various unlocks, and lots of smash points, which is the main currency you use to buy moves. If you keep your savage green tinted eyes peeled and swivel the camera around while jumping, you're sure to find something worth grabbing every block or two. Radical was very generous with the free smash points here. Take a quick tour of the city and you'll have enough to buy that atomic elbow drop you've been lusting over in no time. I also mentioned cheats and unlocks earlier, which is something that those wacky Vancouverites really had some fun with. Found by collecting specific tokens or finishing in-game events, can net you patriotic Hulk pants from around the globe. Lots of different skins and goofy stuff like low gravity, double damage, changing things into cows, and even some graphical filters. Lots of junk to mess around with here. Even more awe-inspiring is the destruction physics on display, which isn't exactly shocking given that, yeah. While you can smash through cars, tanks, and what you'd expect, if you get creative, you can level entire buildings, which collapse in spectacular fashion. Back in 2005, when this game came out, it was pretty impressive, but in 2021, it's still pretty damn impressive. Even when everything's exploding around you, the fact that this game holds up in terms of performance is also appreciated, especially when multiple soldiers, mechs, tanks, and helicopters are bringing the rain down on the Jolly Green Giant. Are there some instances of the game chugging? Very few, yes, but it actually only enhances the mayhem in my opinion. So, the moment-to-moment gameplay, the combat system, the amount of moves you can do, the open-world environments, and the collectibles, well, it's all great stuff, and really reminds me of the massive jump in quality that we saw from Spider-Man 1 to Spider-Man 2, so how long did Radical have to put this all together? Well, Eric Holmes has the answer. It was a game that was in the 18 to 20 month time frame. I believe we extended the date a little bit by burning some of Radical's own money to add polish time. We had a fairly small team of around 32 at peak, I think. We had to move fast and find creative wins. Our publisher was a great help with the game. It was there that I first got to work with Tom Keegan, who is heading up the VO department at Vivendi Games. We got access to an amazing tier of voice talent for the game through working with Tom and his team. Some great memories there of Neil McDonough belting out Oklahoma for his mic check. I think he'd just come off a musical. Ron Perlman had just come off of Hellboy and joined us for Blonsky. Amazing talent. Ah yes, Neil McDonough. While he played Bruce in the mid-90s Hulk cartoon, you might know him best from his turn as M. Bison.
You see, your father has been the milk of my business. But even milk has an expiration date.
Ron Perlman delivers an icy and methodical take on Emil Blonsky and really makes you feel some type of way regarding his hatred of Bruce. Not to be outdone, Richard, Bull from Night Court Mall, is featured as the voice of Devil Hulk. And funnily enough, the Green Guy himself is played by Fred Tatasciore, his first of many times in the role. It's weird, even though this wasn't based on a movie, you get the impression that more money and production value was put into it compared to 2003's Hulk, which certainly gives Ultimate Destruction an edge. Unfortunately, as much as I want to keep praising all the really good stuff here, going back to this game today, there are some things that stand out not as positively. But that's only because the movement, fighting, and destruction are so damn satisfying. But we gotta talk about the flaws in the tough emerald hide of the Incredible Hulk. Once you start smashing and trashing throughout the game, you do feel like one of Earth's mightiest heroes. But after a few hours, well, there's a certain point in Ultimate Destruction where the difficulty, especially in story missions, ramps up a bit too fast and a bit too high. But that's no big deal, right? Just farm smash points and get stronger. Well, since story progression locks off huge tiers of the upgrades, you're just gonna have to beat these missions to get the powers and upgrades you need to beat these missions. While you can gather all the smash points you want, you simply can't get access to the higher tier stuff until the game lets you do that. I really wish the difficulty had been smoothed out to feed into this system a little better. Yeah, I want the chaining power bomb throw, but I gotta protect this fucking building to do it. That leads us to the next issue. 90% of the time, it feels like story missions always seem to come in the form of defending things or stealing things, and it's here where sometimes the game simply gets out of your control. You have to be everywhere all at once all the time, so when one of the many protect missions crop up, you'll find yourself starting, restarting, and starting these missions again and again until you simply get lucky enough to eke out a win. Imagine you're playing an escort mission, but what you're escorting is the size of a friggin' building. And that's because it literally is. Things in the Badlands also can get downright unfair. If you just need to beat up soldiers or vehicles, again, that's totally fine. When you're being chased down or protecting something, bunker the fuck down because a metric ton of military firepower is going to be heading your way. This is a problem because the Badlands are so open with little to no cover or verticality that there's really no place to hide, leading to a lot of deaths where, to quote a famous line, "There's nothing I could do!" It makes this area way tougher than it needs to be, so when a story mission that's locked to this area pops up, I always utter a slight defeated sigh. You might as well introduce the level like this. Now, when you complete these missions that revolve around borrowing a particular piece of scientific equipment, you constantly have to bring it back to the church. You can't just grab the item and that's it. You have to run away from the fuzz, finding a building in the open world with a jump point, select a church, get to it, load into it, drop the whatever it is, and then you get your reward. This gets annoying after a while, but it's pretty much required because the church is the only place you can upgrade via the Hulk store. It would have been really nice if this store had secondary locations in the open world maps, instead of always having to return to the church every single time. There's so many moves to buy or upgrade that it's a fairly big component of the game, and having only one place to do it in hampers the experience somewhat. I will give Radical some slack here, because upgrade trees like this were still in their early days circa 2005, and not everyone had nailed down how best to handle them. It took a few more years, but many studios, Radical included, would eventually let you access your upgrades at any time with the push of a single button. If this game were ever somehow to magically be remastered, this is a definite improvement I'd like to see. Finally, with so much variety in the combat and the things to collect, it feels like maybe not as much attention was paid to how the story is presented. It feels a little tacked on and sparse in areas, as a lot of it is told through text and some really basic in-game cutscenes. Now, what's here is quite good, with a lot of the dialogue feeling authentic thanks to Paul Jenkins' contributions, but it feels like a lot of it was artificially stretched out across too much game. The main thrust of the narrative takes us through Blonsky's transformation and then touches upon Mercy and the Devil Hulk, but you get the impression that some things were simplified or amalgamated. The ending, without going into spoilers, is also a bit on the underwhelming side. Eric explained how there was definitely some stuff left on the cutting room floor. There are always things that are cut in every game. One of the earlier ideas was to go much deeper on the other Hulks. If you look at Paul Jenkins' comic story introducing the Devil Hulk, there is a whole exploration of the Professor and Joe Fixit and other aspects of what's inside Banner's brain. I think at some point we were thinking about exploring the multiple versions of Hulk a bit more. I can certainly say that Paul working with us on the story was a big highlight of the project. So, while I don't think any of the above problems take away from the fun of playing Ultimate Destruction, smoothing out the difficulty spikes and adding some quality of life improvements would make it so much better that you'd really start to get close to the perfect superhero experience. Now, upon release, it won't astonish anyone to know that Ultimate Destruction did extremely well for all involved. High review scores, strong sales, and there were plenty of ideas as to where they'd go next. Unfortunately, Radical getting bought by Activision and all Marvel movie video game rights being incredibly mishandled by Sega, Radical weren't able to capitalize on what they were planning. What were they planning, you ask? Well, if you're a comic book fan, get prepared to pour one out for what could have been. Two big titles that we considered were a larger next-gen sequel going to the PS3 and 360 generation. I can't remember too much about the core of what that was, but I know adding scale and fidelity were the two obvious themes. But the Hulk was still the Hulk, and there are limits to that. The more exciting one to me, however, was changing the property from Hulk to the Ultimates. That would have meant playable Thor, Iron Man, Captain America, and Quicksilver. I still have a bunch of ideas on how to make super speed a core mechanic, and really wanted to explore that. So I had to get Quicksilver. If you look at some of Hulk's abilities in HUD, you'll see the bones of some of that. Hulk's use of the shield is very Captain America inspired. He can grab onto aircraft and ride them down, but Captain America could have climbed in and technically have taken over. What could have been. Overall, Eric recalls the project very fondly, and as you can see, is well into the business of superheroing. And while it's a shame Radical couldn't continue fleshing out the Hulk or other Marvel heroes, everyone on the team should still be proud of what they accomplished here, because to this very day, it is still simply the best video game based on the Gamma-powered badass, despite a few frayed edges on his little purple pants. Therefore, I heartily award the Incredible Hulk Ultimate Destruction a...
A hero!